Papillon, a Grand Canyon Helicopters confirms that it was one of their choppers that went down near the Grand Canyon this evening, killing those 3 people. She got a phone call saying that her brother had been shot and killed in this parking lot right here behind me, and now she's crying out for justice. Take a look behind me here at this row of horses. There's 3 barns just like this one. Both people and their pets are finding a haven here at this shelter. Wildfires devastating the state of California tonight. I'm Gabby Hart, and coming up, why firefighters say this is like something they've never seen before. I want to go ahead and take you in as close to this crime scene as I can get you. We see police here interviewing witnesses. Now, here's what we know. Very few details right now. So far, we've talked to witnesses. We learned that multiple people were shot. One of them, a 10-year-old. Joy says that her husband had a passion for flying, and he had years of experience doing so. Tomorrow, her son plans to pick her up from Las Vegas, and they plan to drive back to California to the site of the crash. And love wins is a message that these 1 October survivors have proven to be true time and time again, not letting that tragedy change them for the worst, but for the better. And all of them were holding one of these in hand, a glow stick, in honor of every person impacted on that tragic night.
A lot of great resolutions there. I want to tell you, if you slip up on your resolution the first couple of days, don't get discouraged. Every day is an opportunity for a new day resolution.
So many people here in this line crossing their fingers that they win big, and I know Latoya and Reed back in the studio crossing their fingers that I win so that I can share with them. For now, I'm reporting live from Prim, Gabby Hart, News 3.
Fingers and toes, and under the set, you can't even see my knees are even crossed.
And we know you would, Gabby.
Not only was he at the scene, he held Tupac in his arms as the rapper said his final words. Chris Carroll says they always knew who killed Tupac, they just couldn't prove it. And today I asked him about the latest developments and what it means for the investigation.
So will the real men get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up.
September 7th, 1996. That's the date rap legend and actor Tupac Shakur was shot in a drive-by shooting here in Las Vegas. And 22 years later, his murder is still an open investigation.
I had Tupac in my arms as he was dying.
Retired Metro Lieutenant Chris Carroll was the first officer on the scene the night of the shooting. He says he tried to get Tupac to identify his shooter, but Tupac refused. What were Tupac's last words to you?
He looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "F you." And those were the last words that he ever said in his life.
And they say it's the white man I severe, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here.
A new documentary called Unsolved provides more insight into Tupac's death. A self-proclaimed gangster named Keefe D said he was in the car when his nephew Orlando Anderson opened fire on a BMW with Tupac and Suge Knight sitting inside. Carroll says police knew Anderson was guilty. They just couldn't prove it.
We've all known, law enforcement, people on the street, the gang community, everybody knows that Orlando Anderson is the shooter in this case. We've known that for years. Unfortunately, he himself was murdered shortly after the Tupac murder.
The documentary sparked outrage, many fans calling for Keefe D to be arrested for accessory to murder. But Carroll says it's not that simple.
Somebody is not guilty of a murder merely because they're in the car. You need a little bit more than that. You got to know what happened.
Carroll says he never imagined Tupac would become such a legend and that he'd still be doing interviews about his death 20 years later.
In the mid-90s, rappers were getting killed left and right. We never thought that 20 years later this would be a thing. I didn't think 6 months later it would be a thing.
Now, it's rumored that Orlando Anderson shot and killed Tupac because he was upset after Tupac and his entourage assaulted him inside of the MGM. Keefe D says the only reason he's confessing now is because he's dying of cancer. So far, no charges have been filed against him. Yeah, we want to start out by warning viewers that the video we're going to show you is shocking and may be disturbing to some. It captures the moments that an officer arrived to the scene and found a man stabbing his wife, that man then charging toward the officer, leaving her no choice but to open fire.
You stabbed her. You stabbed her. You need to get here.
Last Wednesday, Metro says a woman dialed 911 saying her neighbor was stabbing his wife.
Get off of her! Control 784, I'll be out with them. Get off! Get off!
The first officer to arrive on scene, Metro Sergeant Daniela Sino. She found the suspect identified as 30-year-old William Fuller, covered in blood and hovering over his injured wife.
Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
But instead of dropping the weapon, he charged toward the sergeant.
I'm telling you, drop the knife now! Metro Police.
Officer Sino fired 2 shots at Fuller. He died at the hospital. In the last 9 days, Metro says they've been forced to shoot 5 suspects, killing 4 of them.
Police, jump!
We wanted wanted to give viewers a first-hand look at what type of scenarios officers are faced with on a daily basis. So we went through a use of force simulation at the Las Vegas Mob Museum.
They can understand the complexity of situations and also understand the decision-making that has to go in a split second.
And we learned quickly just how difficult it is to make a split-second decision in potentially life or death situations.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Did I get shot?
Yeah, that's about time you did.
Metro's Assistant Sheriff Brett Zimmerman says after reviewing the recent officer-involved shootings, the department is pleased with how their officers have handled themselves.
We're just happy that our officers have not been harmed or injured, and we know that they're trained effectively to handle these situations, as you could see from the last few we've had.